The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gala webinar series. My name is Manuela Noske, and I'm the Communications Manager at Gala. Gala is a global nonprofit trade association that enables communication and business across languages and cultures. We are headquartered in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And today's topic is how to build your localization careers, and for that we invited three discussants, Anna Manditz from Amazon, as well as Dulce Carrillo and Darren Monk from Philips. All three of our discussants are graduates of the University of Washington Certificate in Localization program. Zoran Eberhard will moderate the discussion. Zoran works at Microsoft, but also teaches at the University of Washington Certificate in Localization program. We will kick off the discussion in just a moment, but before, I need to go over our housekeeping items. Everyone's lines are muted to cut down on any noise. If you have any technical difficulties, let me know by using your chat box, and I will work with you to troubleshoot them. If you have a slow internet connection, your audio may be disrupted. If that happens, use the number listed on the GoToWebinar panel to call in with your phone. We are making a recording of this presentation, and you will be able to find it following the presentation on Gala's global website, and you will receive a link by email to it as well. If you have any questions or comments, type them into your chat box. I will keep an eye on the questions that come in throughout the discussion, and I may raise one or two of them during the discussion, but the overall plan is for us to bring those questions once the discussants have said what they want to say. And with that, Zoran, why don't you take over the moderation at this point?
Thank you, Manuela. And I will actually not start the discussion right away because I would like to give Anna, Dulce, and Darren the opportunity to introduce themselves and give a little background. They will come back to different stations of their career as we talk, but I let them introduce themselves on the broad brush stroke. So Anna, please go ahead.
Thank you, Zoran. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Gala webinar. I'm Anna Mandicia. I'm a translation and localization project manager at Amazon. My educational background is in linguistics and foreign languages, and I started my career in the translation and localization industry as a translator and interpreter. I worked as a localization QA tester, and then after finishing the UW certificate in localization program, I landed my first job as a localization project manager on the vendor side at Lionbridge. I had a few different roles at Lionbridge, and after that, I moved to Amazon about 8 months ago, where I'm managing the localization program for Amazon Business.
Hi everyone, I'm Dulce, and I work in the oral healthcare business unit at Philips, and I'm the localization mobile apps lead. And like Anna, my background is a little varied. Linguistics, well, I started in journalism and then switched over to court interpreting and translation. Ended up in video games for a while, and then transitioned onto the life sciences, and worked other company that specialized in defibrillators, and now I'm doing toothbrushes. And now I'll pass it on to you, Darren.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Darren Monk. I am quite new to the industry. I started off in film, subtitles and localization. I did that from home and from New York for the better part of 10 years. Then I transitioned into defibrillators, more on that later, I guess. And I'm now with the packaging art team for oral healthcare as a localization project coordinator.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm glad that both of you said that word defibrillator, because I always stumble over it, although it went fairly smoothly. So my name is Zoran Eberhard. I don't represent Microsoft today, although I'm working for them, but more my instructor side. I've been working as an instructor for the University of Washington's certificate program in localization. And so I had the pleasure of actually teaching all three of you. And that's kind of the one commonality. There's not that many formal programs around. I actually have, we will be talking about learning formats. There are a few programs around. There is a master in the Middlebury Institute. Probably a lot of people in the audience are aware of that or might have even attended the school in Monterey. There is the University of Washington's Localization Certificate Program, which is a part of the continuing education, where I've had the pleasure of teaching together with several esteemed colleagues from the industry. And then there's actually other learning formats. The University of Washington just released this edX program that I would like to point out, which is Internationalization and Localization, an introductory course, one of these massive open online courses, MOOC. And so we have all these different learning formats where, while these three examples are pretty structured, but obviously there are Gala webinars, there's reading material out there, there's internal trainings, at least if you're working for one of the bigger companies. There's obviously the learning on the job, and we will be talking a lot more about that a little later. So I just want to kind of slowly get into the discussion by asking you about kind of your preferred learning format. I mean, there's also the differences between self-led trainings versus instructor-led. There's all these different formats. Do you prefer reading or videos? I know that like my 12-year-old son, when he needs to learn something, he will go to YouTube. There's generational preferences. I'm still the generation that often likes to read a manual, that I always do better when I'm trying to follow the instructions in a manual. Maybe I should go to videos more often sometimes. But there's online versus in-person classrooms. There are all these different formats that you have. And so Anna, just to get started, do you have any preferences there?
Yeah, thanks, Zoran. I definitely did not learn on YouTube about localization, but I prefer instructor-led and classroom setups. I took the certificate in localization program on site in the classroom. I really like in-person interaction with other people, learning from their experiences, and I like working in group settings. I've done a lot of reading by myself to educate myself about localization, but I just find the instructor-led and classroom formats the most effective for me.
How about you, Darren? Do you have a preferred method?
Yeah, complete opposite from you. I am not a manual person. I am hands-on, self-taught, mostly everything. And the same with Anna, the classroom, getting in a group with people, listening to professors go through it, and then getting the assignments to do it ourselves in groups or solo. Definitely not someone who goes out and pursues it in reading, but I do go out and pursue, you know, friendships, networking, talking to people in coffee shops, or just pinging messages, asking questions. That's my preferred.
I would say you have to find what's right for you, because like Anna was saying, I learned that, you know, working and doing school at the same time is challenging for everyone. So unless you have that accountability of either your classroom buddy saying, hey, did you do the assignment yet? Or did you read it? Or, you know, what did you think of this lecture? You know, honestly, life takes over and it's hard to keep up and keep learning. But I like the part about networking, because I actually recruited somebody from our UW class later on when I had the chance to be a manager, because you see talent and you see somebody you want to work with. So you just never know who you're going to meet.
That's a great point. And the one learning format that I omitted, and that I should have pointed out, obviously are conferences. There are those, or I mean, conference could be something like World, which is coming up soon, and like the Gala conference that is held once a year, like the really big events. But obviously, there's also some smaller conferences, and then there are Loc lunches. There's Women in Localization, so there's a lot of networking events. Obviously, great learning opportunities. So thank you for pointing that aspect out. And I agree with you that learning, if you have the peer pressure, that often can help. Yeah. So taking classes together with somebody, even if you take an online course, right? If you have somebody you can tandem with. Interesting insights. Obviously, you all had a classroom, you had the classroom experience, but the question often for people is kind of how well can you prepare people? Well, there's this Latin saying that you don't learn for school, but you learn for life. How much of what you've learned can you apply? So Dulce, I have these three different questions. What did you learn in class that you could apply? But then there are also things that you might have learned on the job that you wished you had been able to learn in class before. And then the third one is, are there things that cannot really be taught in classes as much as the instructors might try?
I think one of the things that really surprised me, because I was already working in the industry and was attending the classes with several of my colleagues, and we realized during the project management portion that they really drilled us down on good customer service. So even if you're asking a question from the client, like, which Portuguese would you like? Trying to educate them, but not, be patronizing, or when you're explaining something, just be clear in your communications. There was some discussion about, well, that really only applies if you're working as on the supplier side, but it's not true, because we all have internal customers, and you are going to end up with the same line of questions before you send it out to the supplier. So the better you are at building those relationships, and doing good customer service, even if it's internal, that really surprised me, and it's one of the things that I keep doing, and I learned from the program. And then one of the things that I would have loved to learn more about, but I know that maybe this is just depending on what situation you find yourself in the job, right? Product design and just the product life cycle, because I was working with hardware and software. I think the classes were really more always speaking about software products. And then when I ended up having to be stuck in the middle of those two, with one being very waterfall oriented and the other one agile, you need to know what you're talking about when you're discussing deliverables and deadlines. And so I wish we would have at least even maybe considered it, because at the time when I was taking the certificate, I was working with video games, which were just software. And one of the things that I don't think you can teach anyone is just critical thinking, slowing down, thinking through things, because typically we react with urgency, right? Like somebody needs the translation yesterday, and it's urgent, everything's urgent. But if you don't take the time to think through and analyze whether there's a risk, doing things a certain way, or if there's no glossary, then you're going to end up paying for it later. Yeah, either because you have to fix things, and then either you have to scrap materials that were printed if it's something physical, or maybe you did not delight your customers and you get a lot of rates and reviews that are poor on the quality. So, yep.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting insight. Kind of, I think a lot of us gain that maturity that from trying to fix that immediate issue at hand very quickly and addressing that, to eventually learning that you also have to think about how can we preempt a similar issue in the future, how can we build our process that we don't get into that situation again, and so on. Anna, same questions for you.
Yeah. The first question, what I learned in the class that I could apply, I learned a lot. As I mentioned in my intro, my background was in linguistics and I had already experience in translation, but I did not have any experience in project management before taking this class. So this class really demystified localization project management for me, and I learned a lot of things that I could apply in my first localization PM job. In addition to that, I found very useful learning about localizability and common issues, localization issues in UI, like placeholders, text expansion, and that was one interesting thing because I was able to identify them in the projects that I was managing, point them out to the customers that I was working with, and provide solutions to those. Also one very valuable thing that I learned in the class was we had a few CAT tools labs where we really learned about different CAT tools, and we learned how translation memories worked. So that really helped me onboard quickly in my role as a localization PM, and in my 4+ years of career as a localization PM, I worked with a handful of TMSs and CAT tools, but once you learn the basics and how they work, it's very easy to learn a new tool.
Anna, is that something that you would recommend for every log PM, just understanding the tools?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yep. Then what I wished I had been able to learn in the class. So I think the focus of our localization project management program was mostly on the traditional project management in the waterfall methodology. But in my first PM role, I was assigned to a very large account where we were getting more than 100 projects a day, where the turnaround times were anywhere between 6 and 72 hours. So there was no time for creating quotes, no time for building schedules, no time for communication plans or anything like that. So that definitely required a different set of skills, mostly how to prioritize, right? So I wish that was something I had awareness of before jumping into my first PM role. And the last
which
one,
which I think, sorry, Anna, to chime in there, but I just wanted to ask Darren and Dulce, do you have the same feeling about project management, that kind of learning agile models, that it's something that you did mostly on the job?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It seems like that is, especially people who have been in localization a little longer, I think they still, maybe they just too fondly remember the days where you had the time to build a schedule. That, yeah, when you talk to some people, some veterans, they might still more think in those terms. I think that having that awareness that yes, you can have multiple projects, and so I think the principles of project management still apply. But yes, you need to handle them very differently. Like in terms of scheduling, yes, 6 hour versus 6 month, it makes a huge difference.
Exactly.
And it might depend on what projects you're working on, because some of the software for defibrillators or medical devices is very complex, and so they will ask you to provide, a schedule, and they will. I've been in meetings where they'll say, "Why do you need 3 layers of QA? Take one out," and you have to know why they're in there.
Same.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, I didn't want to
No worries.
but there are certain topics that I really love dwelling on, and I think this is a good one in terms of project management. Probably everybody in the industry is facing much shorter cycles and needs to. I mean, you don't necessarily need a formal training, but I think it helps you can brush up your skills
Exactly.
thinking about those things and kind of how to balance multiple projects, for example. I think that's a challenge for nearly every lot PM, that you don't only deal with one project. So that's good to remember, because a lot of the traditional project management teaching is basically assuming that you have that one big project. People think more of the construction industry than they think of this multiple small translation localization jobs that people juggle.
Yeah. And to answer your last question, something that cannot really be taught in a class or a webinar, I think it's working with minimal input from either your clients or stakeholders, and making trade-offs. It's usually between quality and on-time delivery and or budget. So because, and also managing your stakeholders' expectations effectively while you're doing that, right? Because everyone wants to get projects translated with high quality, high speed, at low cost, which is often impossible, right? So you really need to understand where your stakeholders are coming from, what they're trying to achieve, what their goals are, and make those trade-offs and educate them.
How do you avoid that you don't make wrong assumptions?
Yeah, I think the biggest part is just building a relationship with your stakeholders and understanding what they really need, and if there are any risks, flagging them up front, and making sure that they're comfortable with those risks. So
you have to manage that minimal input in a way.
Yes.
But I agree with you that like as much as you can stress the importance of communication, there's often those things that are lacking from stakeholders, so that you only learn afterwards what they really wanted.
Yes, exactly.
Do you sometimes struggle with the same issues, Dulce and Darren?
Yeah, I was going to answer my questions backwards just so I can go straight from Anna's. Like,
oh yeah, you got the word anyways.
Just managing stakeholders. When I interviewed for Philips, they asked me the question of how are you at wrangling cats, which I've never been asked before. And now that I've been in there a couple of months, I understand exactly what they meant by that, because they're all over the place. They're all over the world. They're all over the schedule. They want things yesterday. They have high expectations. And so I've taken the approach of, when I first started, I was ultra professional in my emails. And now I've learned how each of them works. So you have the cat who's needy. You have the cat who doesn't want to speak to you, but does want to have updates every now and then. And you want the cat that just wanders off. So I didn't learn that in class. That was one of my, I was told to expect it in class. That's the difference. I was told to expect it in class, but how to actually manage it, that really depends on how you as a person are able to deal with the stress that brings on, and how well you organize your schedule and know your milestones and know where you are in a project at any given time, to then translate that to email or walk over to someone's desk or ping them quickly, or have a conversation over a ping pong game, which is what I did yesterday. I'm getting really good at ping pong because one of the people I work with is the ping pong fanatic. So we do our updates over a little game, and that's how I deal with it. But you, Dulce?
I think it depends, right, on what you have going on. But I've been in projects. I've been in charge of product lines that had multiple tiny projects, and it's the hardest part is that sometimes this portion of the product might be ready before the software. And so then we made decisions on something over here that is going to be affected by how the software ends up actually getting validated and launched. And so you always have to be, like you said, herding cats, but also communicating to all the stakeholders, what you do affects these other people on the other building and, across the world. And so we really need to align on terminology, on, voice and branding and, marketing campaigns. When are you going to start telling people or teasing them out and like, this is our new product? Because it has an impact on localization and budgets. And so I've learned also that, you just have to communicate and always be overly communicative, but clear and crisp, right? Like I always read my emails out loud because I know I'm speaking to people who, like me, have English as their second language. And so you just always have to know, it's got to be clear, like no room for mistakes, because otherwise if something goes wrong, I always go back to, well, maybe I wasn't clear enough. So.
And I mean, the counterpart to that, and all of you have mentioned that, is that you have to communicate clearly, but you also have to pull a lot of information from other people, right? You need to have your ear on the pulse of what's going on around you, because localization is not always the thing that product design, for example, have on their mind first. So learning to insert you into certain conversations is always pretty helpful. Great. I actually have a question that I just thought of while we were talking, which is not on the slide deck, but I felt like it's one of those things, because you talk a lot about stress and managing multiple projects at the same time and all these things. Are there certain skills that you kind of learn on the job for your life, for your private life, and the other way around, the kind of cross-pollination between life and job? I mean, you bring, like I think Darren mentioned, the skill of adapting to people, right? That is something that whether you learned it before you had the job and you could use it in your job, or the other way around, now you can also adapt to the strange cat in the bar that suddenly talks to you about Mariners baseball. You're not interested in baseball, but you can handle it. There's always this cross-pollination between job and life.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there is. It's coming with stories, anecdotes, things you've learned. Like my kid teaches me things. He has great attention to detail. My wife's in the medical field, so I get like input from her and things I hear from her, and we go out shopping and I see our products on the shelves and how people respond to that as I'm looking at them, look around, and whether they choose our product or another product. I just go up and flatly ask them what interested you. I'm not shy like that. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I pull from, but the things that I pull from home mostly is just like ultimately how to stay calm. I have a new baby girl at the same time I took the course, at the same time I started my first position at Philips. So it was a really busy time in my life, and it was a really, really good time to learn. Calm. Everything's okay. Tomorrow will arrive. Your projects are fine. Your family's fine. So I learned those two together.
I just use my calendar to block, to make sure things go out, just to keep track of stuff. And I do it for personal life too, right? Like if my kid needs something from me, she's working on a project, like I need to make sure that there's enough time in the day to get everything done as much as possible. And it's back to what Anna was saying about prioritizing. Sometimes you have to manage expectations with your stakeholders and say, this is an unreasonable deadline, and no, I'm not going to push my supplier just because you did not plan accordingly, because you're only enabling them to do it again. If you're in a company where people have been working there for 10 years and this is their MO, what's going to give? Like, why are they going to change unless you bring it up to them and you educate them? Listen, our supplier, it's not just this weird entity. It's built with people who also have holidays, who also have a family, and we need to treat them with respect, just the way you don't want to come in on the weekend, they don't want to do it either. So let's plan. And there are the times when we do need a quick turnaround because there's a mistake or their lives are at risk because a software upgrade needs to go out. Let's use those urgent times for those types of scenarios instead.
Well, and people might be more willing to actually do some urgent work when you have a better relationship to them as well, right? So
yeah, I get favorable treatment.
Building the relationship can be really useful. Anna, any insights from you?
Yeah, I was gonna say, unlike Dulce and Darren, luckily I've never worked in the life sciences localization. So to stay cool in a very stressful times, I had to remind myself that people's lives don't depend on what I'm doing. And it's just a software localization. And just to remind myself that we are all people who have, as Dulce said, lives outside of our jobs, and that, when something is really urgent, we do get the stuff done, but after all, it's just a job. And as I said, people's lives don't depend on it. But also another skill that I was able to apply on my personal life, I think I've become a better project manager for my family. I have 2 kids and I'm doing a great job with managing their activities, I would say. At least that's what my husband says.
Well, parenting is a PM job.
Yes, exactly.
So, so that put that little digression in there. I still want to learn about how you learned for the next step in your career. So obviously you had a first job in the localization industry. I mean, you can also talk about the very first job that you had. Did you do anything to prepare for the job? And then how did you prepare for the step following your first one? Were you more conscious, more deliberate about things there? And what did you do differently as you grew? Let's start with Darren this time.
So these are great questions for me as well. How did I prepare for my first job? I landed on my first job because of my accent, because I understand very thick, heavy English accents, and I was in New York interning for no pay, and then my first job in subtitling films, a guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, what's this guy saying in this film?" And it was Cockney rhyming slang. So I didn't really prepare for my first job. I just answered a question. And then he asked, "Do you want to do this film?" And that film turned into the job. That's it. It's the most bizarre thing. And I did that for 10 years. And then I had a second baby. And I'm like, this isn't the lifestyle I can have anymore, working freelance in film. So how did I prepare for my second job at Philips? Took the course. I knew the skills I had. I knew the kind of job I wanted. And I looked on good old Google about anything. I was living in Seattle by now, so anything in the Seattle area that I could afford, I could get to with the commitments I had, the current job and the baby, and the course was how I prepared. Because after I took that, I went to all of the slug meetings, which is another type of meetup group. The class, this is my own research, and then the networking. I only got my job at Philips because it was someone else in the class found it and they interviewed for it, and then they turned it down and then recommended me to it. So kind of keep falling into jobs. But what would I do differently, or what do I do differently as I grew? I don't know. I became calmer. I became more confident. It was more the soft skills, because I knew I had the hard skills down, and I learned the hard skills in the course. It was the soft skills that I finessed as I've grown from running around New York screaming everything's on fire to where I am now, where everything is still on fire, but I can manage it better. So the soft skills is the only thing I did differently.
Right. So you really went between the extremes of stumbling into your first job, and then the second you were very deliberate, right? If you
it was a very conscious choice. It was the right time. My baby was actually, no, she wasn't even born when I took the course. Like my wife was, because she was born at the end of your semester. She was born December 29th, and our course finished, I think, December, just before Christmas. yeah, it was very conscious because, you know, we had the baby on the way. I think I found out about the course June, July of that year. And it took a lot of thinking, a lot of asking the wife, can I do this? Because it will be when you are super pregnant and then super new mum. Making the plans to balance that, coming up with you know, the schedule, the project, the family project management, because I also have an older kid too who's a very needy child. It's you know, he's just a noise making machine as well. So it was very deliberate, very conscious choice, and it was probably the best professional choice I've ever made in my life. I'm super happy I had the courage to go through with it. And thank you for teaching me.
Dulce, how about you? How did you prepare for first and then the later jobs?
Well, my first job in localization, I was doing legal court interpreting and translation of legal also on the side, and medical insurance claims. And I think it was starting to get to me, right? You're the voice of a lot of bad things happening to a lot of people. And so I was also trying to see what I could transition onto. And some of the suppliers I was working for as a freelancer started sending me some QA jobs for Nintendo at the time. And that just kind of started my career into the video games. So I did a little bit of stuff for them, building glossaries and, you know, teaching them like linguistic things, how to run their programs better as a contractor on the side. And then finally, I just decided to look for jobs in the video gaming industry, and I found one. I worked for Big Fish Games, which was a startup back then. And then when we were doing all these, which was a portal that not only was deploying games, it was only making their own games, but also it was a portal for other developers all over the world who maybe needed different types of help to get their games launched internationally. So it was really exciting because you really had a chance to work with so many different types of people and so many different types of, you know, builds, software builds. Some packages were a total disaster and others were just beautiful. Like, you know, all the language packages were in there. Like it really taught us a lot, but we realized that we needed to get a little bit more formal in our program as Big Fish kept growing. So we started looking for courses, and we found the UW course, and a bunch of us would commute after work and take the class. And I think some of the other classmates would make fun of us and say, "Oh, here come all the fishies." You know, we'll be in the same car. Yeah, and it was interesting because we would like roll our eyes when, you know, you or Jan or one of the other professors would say, you know, and then this is why you don't do this. We were like, oh yeah, that's right. We just had that problem today. Let's go back and do the other thing, they said. So yeah, I think it helped us a lot to unlearn all the bad practices that we're building on or that we were getting from some of the developers, and it helped us educate them to launch their games in a more professional way. And I think then you know, it takes courage to transition into a different industry, regardless of where you're at. And Big Fish was downsizing, and so the whole international team was getting killed, and you know, we were offered different positions, and I did not really see myself working as a graphic designer back then. And so I just moved on and went on to a company that has since been acquired too. But they're the inventors of the fibrillation, and it was just a really interesting shift. But I think it's like Darren was saying, it's all the soft skills, right? Because every job is going to have its own set of challenges. I went from being in a startup world where everybody rolls up their sleeves and learns something, Google something. You just, you know, you make it happen, because we had to get content out, you know, for several different languages, and it was a lot of effort. And then I went to a place where they were like, no, you need to prove to me that you completed all these trainings to do this one job you have. And while you can help this other person, you cannot be signing off or doing things that that your role is not assigned to do, because the FDA might, you know, or any other regulator that audits us may say, why is Dulce doing this engineering specification? She's not, you know, qualified. So just learning that, it's a different pace. It's just a different set of skills. But I think, like with anything, if you have the will and you are curious and you ask people who are on the job already, you can learn a lot, and transition can be easier. So.
Are you consciously thinking while, I mean, you've been in the industry for quite some time now, are you thinking about things you want to invest in right now that might bring you further?
I've kind of dabbled along the way, and like I've done some programming, just to help myself communicate better with developers. But I've realized time and time again, whenever I find myself coding, I'm like, this is not for me. This is painful. It takes me twice as long as the person next to me. So I think I've always been a curious person, and so you just have to find whatever works for you. Right now I see that I really enjoy learning also about product design, but I don't know that I see myself as a product manager. I think I like being really specialized in what I do, but knowing enough about, everybody else so that I can be a better contributor. Lately, I'm learning a lot about design and UX and UI. And now I'm transitioning a little bit and I actually am enrolling another certificate on storytelling and content writing, because I went from being in technical documentation with the life sciences. So I went first from doing like copy editing for marketing and video games, right? It's more catchy and more in the transcreation space. And then to the very rigid medical device, line by line has to be accurate, and you don't have a lot of creative room. And now I'm in this weird space where it is still regulated. It's still a medical device, but the content we're putting out on the app is still in digital marketing. So we have to learn a lot about, engagement and how to keep our users coming back to the app and with content that is valuable for them. And so I'm learning a little more about how do we do that in all these different languages, because personalization is the latest thing, right? So.
Great, thank you. Anna, same 3 questions for you.
Yeah. So how did I prepare for my first job? As I mentioned earlier, I did have experience working as a translator, an interpreter, and localization QA tester, which really provided a basis for understanding how localization works. But what really prepared me for my first localization PM job was the certificate in localization program. It really served as a springboard for that first job, because it really equipped me with a deeper understanding of what goes into localization processes, and also some important skills that I was able to apply on the job, but also to set me apart from other candidates who are applying for the same job. Because to your point earlier, Zoran, as you said, there are not too many programs out there, and people still end up in localization by accident with some prior knowledge of project management, but from other fields, and not necessarily understanding what translation and localization is about, but they learn it on the job. So I think that really prepared me well for my first job. And then for my second job, actually, while I was working on the vendor side, I did have a few different roles. I worked as a project manager, and then a quality manager, and then a global program manager. But that change happened somehow organically. I grew into those roles, right? But then really my, I should say, second company, I made a shift from the vendor to the client side. And what really prepared me for that was the experiences I gained on the vendor side. So I really gained deep knowledge of the processes on the vendor side, what challenges they're facing, which now helps me partner well with the vendors that I'm working with, because I understand what their needs are, but I also understand what their capabilities are, right? And I also had an opportunity while I was working on the vendor side to work with a few different clients and see different approaches to localization, see different needs that the clients have, and work on providing those solutions for those different needs. So I really had a perspective, a broad perspective of the best practices in localization that I can now apply on my new job and on our localization program, right? So I think that the experience working on the vendor side was invaluable. To answer your last question, what did I do differently as I grew? I wouldn't say I did something differently. It was more building upon my previous experiences. And as Darren mentioned earlier, I think as I grew in my career, I gained more confidence, and which I also seeked out more challenges and new learning opportunities that will help me grow my career.
Cool. So yeah, basically taking your current job always as an opportunity also to learn for the possible next job doesn't necessarily mean that you really want to leave right away. No, it's just keeping in mind that every job gives you that opportunity to learn, right?
Exactly.
Making the most out of it.
Yep.
Thank you. My last question is actually learning from others. In this case, I don't mean that YouTube personality or that instructor. More in general, I mean, we have these mentors, formal or informal. We sometimes have. I like to talk about the manager that I actually liked the least, that taught me the most in how to deal with managers, because he did not work how I expected managers to work, and they taught me really valuable lessons. Not that I really liked it that much at the time, but who did you learn from? Let's start with Darren.
I learned from everyone. I sat down and had lunch with Dulce yesterday, right? And you had some very good insights for me, because I am at a point in my contract where I don't know if it'll be extended or if I'll get full time or if I should start looking for my next position. And you really laid down a lot of, I don't know, good, solid advice, and I took that on. So that was just yesterday, and I keep up with a lot of people in class. Danielle, Marcos. Before I got my job at Philips, I had 2 opportunities, and I had to sit down again, and I was just like, please help me, I don't know what to do. I think I did the same with you too. So I just everyone is an opportunity to learn, and like you, I haven't had terrible managers. I've been blessed with like really good managers. Like I have a great manager right now who is able to keep me laser focused, and if I'm too laser focused, sort of like pull me back a bit and redirect me. Everyone has you know, every interaction I did something wrong and I got not told off, but I got, you know, a bit of reprimanding, and that was, you know, she called me later to apologize. I'm sorry if I was mean. I'm like, you weren't mean. It was a fantastic learning lesson. Like that's how I take all my interactions with, you know, stakeholders, people in my life, friends, mentors, unofficial mentors. Yeah, everyone.
Which stresses the importance of networks again, right? Because those are the people that you can learn from very well. Anna, how about you?
Yeah, as Darren mentioned, first of all, from my instructors at the UW program, right? But then also, I think building a network is really important, because I've learned a lot from many different people. But I think I've learned the most from There are two people that I think I've learned the most from. One of them is a close friend of mine who has worked in the localization industry for almost 20 years. And she was the person I could turn to for advice for anything related to localization, either to discuss about challenging situation at work or how to solve some localization issues, or to discuss about career choices when I was ready to make changes in my career. And also I learned a lot from the VP and the managing director at the time that I had a chance to work with while I was at Linebridge. And by working closely with her, I've really learned a lot about stakeholders management and communication and building trusting work relationships. I think she was just amazing at it. And even though I never had formal coaching on it, it was just helpful to observe her and see how she does it. So I just take the opportunity to observe other people, see what they're doing, and take the best from those situations.
Dulce?
I mean, I don't want to sound repetitive, but yeah, you can, if you're really open to learning from everyone, you can. And also, I think probably early on in my shift from video games to life sciences, I was really struggling with a lot of things, but mainly from being, you know, in a very large international team where I was, you know, maybe managing a certain amount of responsibility, and then going to the life sciences where I was like in charge of, I don't know, like 10 product lines and a bazillion different moving parts and pieces. And so two things. I remembered you had a guest speaker. I'd been doing as a translator a lot of glossaries, and I knew the importance of terminology, but I did not know this was like its own discipline and that there were actual experts in that field. So you had Barbara Ingekaj, I don't know if I said her name right, and I actually ended up getting her to come in back at that job and create a small glossary. I only had a small budget, but she helped us a lot because I just did not, you know, it was just me, and I could not possibly do all this, you know, read through all these manuals to get all these to extract all these terms. So she taught me a lot, and I actually pursued certification in terminology after that because, you know, I just couldn't get any more budget to do it. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just learn how to be more efficient with my time. So you're always learning, you know, and then I think I also reached out to Soren at some point. I was like, I'm trying to build some internal documentation on what's the difference between globalization and internationalization, and I don't think I know myself very well. And so it was, you know, at the time it was really nice to have Soren just kind of break it down and say, well, you know, Microsoft is different, but you know, here's how we see things, and you have to also adapt it to what you do at your own company. And I think that was a valuable lesson that I still take today, like, just adapt, because we're all figuring it out as we go. Technology is moving so fast that we cannot be just like, well, best practices say, yes, they're there and they're a baseline, but you should do what's best for your product, for your user, and for your company, right? And then the trailblazers are, you know, always reinventing things and doing what works for them. So that'd be really my advice. Just try things. Don't be afraid. Just make sure you document what you did well so you can turn around and not do it.
Great. I want to leave a little bit of time. Yeah, I could still ask a few more follow-up questions. One question that I actually just thought of. I think all of you are kind of already getting into the situation where you're also teaching others, right? But we don't want to dwell on that. I think, Dulce, you were having a talk at Locworld coming up. Is that right? Yeah,
Yes.
so
Cornelia,
you're on the other side. Yeah, you're on the other side as well, and so eventually, kind of, we can also give back. But like that importance of learning from others, I think that's stressing the importance of getting together with other people in the industry, whatever opportunities you might have for that. Manuela, do we have questions from the audience? Because I think we only have 5 more minutes left.
That's right. Yeah, we need to begin to wrap it up. So here's one, a very concrete question that maybe one of you has the answer to. Where can somebody in the localization learn more about product design and product management? It may be out of your field. Yeah.
I was wondering whether Dulce wanted to answer that.
Because Dulce has a webinar coming up on October 31st, Halloween, where she would talk about the development role, the role of localization in new product development. So.
Right. Well, I took a couple courses. There's, I don't want to be the competition, but to UW, but there's a place called General Assembly, and they have a lot of places all over the world. And I did a boot camp on product design and product development, and there's multiple others. If you start Googling, you'll be amazed. As for the curriculum, I think that's how you can really tell whether they know what they're talking about or not. And just inquire, who are the instructors? Are there real people who have done this as product managers or startup owners or anything like that? Because they will really drill you down. And then I also took the business course for UW, also a certificate. It's like a mini MBA. So it's like at the end, you're supposed to come up with a pitch to venture capitalists and say, here's the product that I'm building, or the company I'm supposed to be building. You work in teams, and yeah, it was a great learning experience. It's a lot of hard work. So just
great.
Google things.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And one more question here from one person saying, that she's heard that localization PMs do not actually use their foreign language skills. They use people and team management skills, and just wants to get a check on, is that your experience as well?
Sadly, it is.
Indeed.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I fix things all the time. Like I know we're not supposed to, because you also don't want to,
That's right. I fix things all the time too, until somebody told me to stop.
Right. I think, well, it depends, right? Because if you're in the continuous delivery, you do, like I said, you have to adapt and just do what works for you.
Yeah. No, I think it's handy. It certainly comes in handy, but it is not a skill that I would build on if I were a localization PM. Right, because that's really not your role. So yeah, no, I think we're all in agreement that that's rare and occasional and almost accidental when it happens.
Can I add something to
Sure.
that answer? I feel you're doing it on a higher level. So you might not apply translation skills very often, but the knowledge of a foreign language, of foreign languages, is super valuable wherever you work in localization. So just starting with localizability, just understanding that a sentence structure might just not work with placeholders. There's so many areas where knowing another language, yes, you might not apply the knowledge of your specific second, third, well, or maybe first language, but having that language, having that linguistic knowledge, I think, is super, super valuable.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Absolutely. We're going to have to call it quits. Before I do that, I just wanted to mention that Gala is actually launching an academic membership for universities this quarter. If you are a student in an academic program, keep your eyes peeled for the announcement. It will mean a free membership to Gala for anybody in an academic institution. If you want to get more details, you can email to membership@gala-global.org. And then lastly, a really big thank you to our panelists this morning who got up and to be ready at 8 o'clock to talk about their experience, in a certificate program and what of all that they could apply and how it helped them actually shape a career in the local industry. Thank you to our audience for calling in. And just one reminder, we would appreciate it if you could take just a moment to give us your feedback on the session using the post-event survey that will pop up. It's super short, but it helps us to hear from you. With that, I wish you all a good day or good night, depending on where you are, and we look forward to seeing you at another Gala webinar soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.